In Happy Gilmore 2, Adam Sandler is a one-time rebel fighting to keep it old school. How can you keep your internet browsing experience old school on a modern web full of obtrusive tracking, ads, and online censorship? NordVPN! Guys, you're watching a web video in 2025. You know what a VPN does. And if you don't, you can learn more and try the NordVPN 2-year plan plus 4 months extra by going to nordvpn.com/moviebob or follow the link in the description, risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. VPNs help you, your PC, your workstation, your tablet, your whatever. I'm an old guy, we just called it the computer. Be in more than one place at one time, even if you're not. Are you trying to look up the classic or hard to find movies, TV series, or games I talk about on my channel, but find they're only available to view or stream in certain regions? It happens to me all the time, and NordVPN can help with that. In an age where more and more content is getting restricted, siloed, or censored, NordVPN is all about making the internet more free and letting you see and share more information. The way the web ought to be. Like I said, check it out for yourself and see what you might have been missing. Click the link in the description or go to nordvpn.com/moviebob to get the NordVPN 2-year plan plus 4 months extra risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And now, on to the show. Okay, so this is interesting, which is not what you expect to be able to say about a 30 years later sequel to one of the original 1990s Adam Sandler star-making vehicles. Funny, you at least hope to be able to say about this or any comedy, and make no mistake about it, Happy Gilmore 2 is pretty damn funny. Maybe not modern classic, and definitely not as good as the original, but when your starting point for anything is made-for-Netflix sequel to an Adam Sandler movie from the mid-90s, pretty good might as well be a solid gold endorsement. But it's also interesting because when you stop and think about it, Happy Gilmore is kind of a tough movie to game out an old man comes back to the game sequel premise for. The original is about Sandler as this angry would-be hockey player who tries to save his grandma's house by becoming a golf hustler, and it turns out his hockey slapshot translates into a superhuman line drive skill, so he ends up joining the Pro Tour. And the gimmick in the original premise was that having this funny, loud, angry young guy who brings not only that energy but also his rowdy, young, working-class fan base to the stuffy old rich guy world of golf, and this, of course, being the immediate pre-Tiger Woods era, was inherently funny in a slobs versus snobs, lightweight class warfare way. To the degree that Happy Gilmore was about anything other than jokes, it was about the conflict between Happy as a young rebel against the establishment and villains like Christopher McDonald's Shooter McGavin, who saw Happy as a threat to real golf traditions. Now, the arc of doing a rebel who took the throne and now has to defend it against a new rebel who's rebellious in a bad way story can work, especially in a sports movie. I mean, that's the plot of Rocky 3, and Rocky 3's pretty good, but in the Rocky movies, Rocky actually liked and respected the sport of boxing. It was part of his whole thing. Whereas the big running joke in Happy Gilmore is that Happy doesn't even like golf. So what do you do with a character like this that doesn't just completely flip the premise and suddenly say, well, actually, now, golf being a sport for old guys and having traditions matters, and rowdy young upstarts are bad because an old guy is what Happy is now, and he's still our protagonist. And as it turns out, their answer is to just do exactly that and not worry too much about the cognitive dissonance, because if you theme the new villains around topical political signifiers and cultural references that are obnoxious enough, the narrative will basically sort itself out and the audience will probably go with it. And it mostly kind of works. So, to wit, the premise that we're working from here is that Happy has been both long retired from golf and fallen on hard times along with his now adult children because reasons, and he's pulled back into the world of big money golf in part through the machinations of Benny Safdie as an evil CEO who wants to create a new extreme version of golf for the influencer age, built around shady science and gimmicky rules and a whole Paul Brothers, Mr. Beast type aesthetic that he claims was inspired by Happy's own shaking up of traditional golf back in the 90s. But Happy has now actually grown to respect the sport, and ultimately his own getting my shit back together arc gets tied into becoming the champion that has to defeat this evil scheme and save real golf from being destroyed, and eventually Shooter McGavin shows up again to get looped back into this plot in an interestingly unexpected way. But yeah, it's basically exactly what it sounds like. The movie kind of pretzeling itself to find a narratively coherent way to plant a flag for 90s Sandler movie anarchic anti-establishment vibes were pure and just, but 2000 YouTuber crypto bro anti anti-establishment vibes are evil and must be resisted and destroyed. And if you're still confused as to exactly why the movie wants you to understand these are the bad guys and what specific cultural signifiers and ideological alignments make their version of being a loud, rude jerk bad, but 90s Adam Sandler version good, check out the X in the Maxi Golf logo. And I know it feels like I'm mostly noting how shaggy and loose it is, but this really basically works. You know, like, it's a lot of goofy characters, the tone is very inconsistent, but that was also true of the original, which was also very shaggy and loose. That was kind of the aesthetic of 90s Adam Sandler movies. They are not really renowned for their high production values or internal screenplay consistency. So at a certain point, if a sequel is hitting exactly that same tone, but also still being very funny, is it really a critique to note that, because the lack of evolution from the mid-90s to this in terms of tone and execution could just be an aesthetic choice. Like, if the goal here was to absolutely nail the series of sketch comedy ideas loosely hung together by a plot and thrown together up on screen before we realized whether it was a good idea or not vibe of this specific era in comedy, then yeah, congratulations guys, you nailed it. And it still gets a lot of laughs out of the premise. There's a good use of the supporting cast, a lot of funny cameos. Typical caveat for reviewing comedies, it's hard to review a comedy because how do you tell people, yeah, this joke was funny without spoiling the joke? And while I'm not entirely sure that the wide stab at topical relevance really hangs together in a consistent way, it does understand the core of what the original was about in terms of why Happy was the good guy versus why the other guys were not the good guys. There's still some decent business of who's getting stood up for versus who's getting stood against, and the places where it finds the modern versions of who the villains and heroes would be in this scenario basically work out. It's not a wonderful film, but it is very funny, which, if we're being honest, was also the accurate review at the time of the original movie. So I'm happy to call this a 7 out of 10. You should see it.